The slap came before I even finished saying I do. For one frozen second, the whole cathedral forgot how to breathe. 300 guests sat beneath crystal chandeliers and white roses. Cameras were rolling because his mother wanted the wedding live-streamed to every powerful family in Seoul. The Kang Council sat in the first 2 rows in black suits, silent as stone. 6 guards stood along the walls with earpieces in, pretending this was a wedding and not a public coronation for Korea's most dangerous family heir. And there I stood at the altar in my ivory gown, cheek turned from the force of his hand, holding a bouquet that suddenly felt like it belonged to someone else's dream. Ryu Sun-jae looked at me like I was dirt on the bottom of his expensive shoes. "You humiliated me," he said into the altar microphone. "You really thought I wouldn't find out before I married you?" The microphone caught every word. So did the live stream. So did the mistress in the red dress standing near the front pew, smiling like she had paid for this moment in advance. Her name was Vance. For 3 years, Ryu told me she was just a family friend. Then she became an old university connection. Then she became someone who understood the pressure he was under. Then she became the woman whose calls he answered when mine went unanswered. And now she stood in my wedding aisle wearing red silk, not subtle, not ashamed, one hand resting over her heart like she was the injured one. "Sun-jae," I said, and somehow my voice did not shake. "What exactly did I do?" He stepped closer. The guards did not move. His mother did not blink. The council watched me like men watching a contract being terminated. "Don't play innocent, Nia," Ryu said. "Iris told me everything. The accounts, the transfers, the money you moved through Kang Holdings while pretending you loved me." A low murmur passed through the church. My mother, sitting in the 3rd row after flying in from Atlanta, rose halfway from her seat, but my best friend Priya caught her hand. Priya knew me well enough to know that I did not need rescuing in that moment. I needed room. I needed witnesses. I needed every camera to keep recording. "I have never stolen from your family," I said. Ryu laughed. Not loudly. Worse than that. Softly. Like he pitied me. Then he reached inside his jacket and pulled out folded papers. He did not hand them to me. He threw them at my feet. That was the detail my heart remembered before it remembered the slap. The way the papers hit the marble floor. The way 300 wealthy people looked down with them, like my name had fallen there too. $3 million, he said. "Routed through a shell account with your signature. My mother's lawyers found it this morning." "This morning?" I looked at him. "On our wedding day?" God spared me from marrying a thief. Iris stepped closer, her red dress whispering against the aisle runner. "Ryu, don't let her twist this. She's good with words. That's how she got this far." That was when I understood. This was not an accident. This was theatre. The slap, the papers, the microphone, the live stream, Iris in red, Madame Choi sitting like a queen who had finally found a clean way to remove the black woman she never wanted in her bloodline. They had not discovered the accusation on my wedding day. They had scheduled it. I bent down in my wedding dress and picked up the papers myself. Slowly, carefully, with more dignity than he had shown me. The first page showed an account number I did not recognize. The second page showed my name. The third page showed a signature that tried very hard to look like mine. It failed. "This is not my signature," I said. Ryu's jaw tightened. "Convenient." "No," I said, lifting the papers so the nearest camera could see them. "Forensics are convenient. Metadata is convenient. Audit logs are convenient. Lies only work when no one checks the details." A few people shifted. Ryu's mother, Madame Choi Yeon-hee, finally stood. She was dressed in silver, cold, elegant, untouchable. She had spent 3 years making me feel like a guest in every room Ryu promised would one day be mine. "Nia," she said, as though she was calming a servant, "do not make this uglier than it already is." I looked at her. "You let him do this." Her face did not change. That was answer enough. Ryu held out his hand. "Take off the ring." For a second, I looked down at it. 3 carats, custom cut. A proposal under rain-washed lights in Busan. 3 years of loyalty wrapped around my finger like a promise. Then I slid it off. I did not throw it. I did not cry. I did not beg. I placed it in his palm with more grace than he deserved. "I hope she is worth what you are about to lose," I said. Ryu smiled. "I am not losing anything." I am choosing the woman who stood beside me when you tried to destroy my family. He turned toward the room, toward the cameras, toward the council. This wedding is cancelled. Miss Calloway will be escorted out. Miss Calloway. Not Nia. Not my love. Not my bride. Just Miss Calloway, like he had already filed me away under a category of people he no longer needed. 2 guards stepped forward. That was when the cathedral doors opened. Everyone turned. A man in a dark suit stood at the back of the church, framed by daylight. He was not part of the wedding party. He was not on the guest list. He did not raise his voice. He did not have to. Every guard in the room recognized him before Ryu did. Elliot Voss, CEO of Voss Meridian Group, billionaire investor. The man people in Seoul described quietly, because saying his name too loudly in the wrong room could change the temperature. He walked down the aisle with 2 attorneys behind him and a security team so calm they looked almost bored. His eyes moved once to my cheek, then to the papers in my hand, then to Ryu. Those guards will not touch her, Elliot said. Ryu frowned. This is a private family matter. No, Elliot said. It stopped being private the moment you broadcast an accusation involving accounts connected to entities I control. The church went silent again, but this time the silence belonged to him. Madame Choi's face changed, only for half a second, but I saw it. Fear. Ryu saw it too. Mother? He said. Elliot stopped beside me, not close enough to claim me, not dramatic enough to distract from what had happened, just close enough to make it clear I was no longer standing alone. Miss Calloway, he said quietly. Do you want to leave? For 3 years, Ryu had made decisions for me in the name of love. His mother had spoken over me in the name of family. His council had judged me in the name of tradition. Elliot asked. That was the first difference. I looked at Ryu. I looked at Iris. I looked at Madame Choi. Then I lifted the forged bank statements. No, I said. Not yet. I turned to the camera closest to the altar. My name is Nia Calloway, I said. I did not steal from Kang Holdings. I did not forge these papers. I did not betray this family. But since Ryu Sun-jae wanted witnesses, I want them too. Ryu took 1 step toward me. Nia, stop. I smiled. It was the first time I smiled all day. No, Sun-jae. You stopped being allowed to tell me what to do when you raised your hand at this altar. A sound moved through the room. Not a gasp. Not exactly. More like the first crack in a wall everyone thought was solid. Elliot looked at one of his attorneys. The attorney opened a black folder. Effective immediately, she said, voice clear. Voss Meridian Group is placing a preservation hold on all Kang Holdings financial systems pending review of suspected fraud, forged documentation, and governance misconduct. Ryu stared at her. You cannot do that. Elliot looked at him. I own the debt structure that keeps your empire standing. That was when the first council elder stood. Then the second. Then the third. Men who had not moved when Ryu humiliated me now rose to their feet because the real power in the room had finally spoken. Ryu looked around, confused, angry, exposed. What is this? He demanded. Elliot's voice stayed calm. The part where you learn the throne you slapped her from was never yours. If you have ever been humiliated in front of people who knew the truth but stayed silent, comment I stowed UP below. Because this is the moment Nia stopped standing alone. I walked out of that cathedral with forged papers in one hand and my bouquet in the other. Behind me, Ryu shouted my name for the first time all morning. Not Miss Calloway. Nia. But I did not turn around. Not even once. By the time I reached the cathedral steps, the live stream had already gone viral. By the time I reached the car, Kang Holdings' internal payment systems had been frozen. By the time I reached the hotel, Ryu Sun-jae was calling me. I turned off my phone. Then I sat in the back seat of Elliot Voss's black car, pressed the bouquet into my lap, and finally let one tear fall. Only one. Because the woman who cried for 11 blocks in the old version of my life did not exist anymore. My name is Nia Calloway, and before that wedding, I thought I was marrying the heir to a Korean Mafia empire. After that wedding, I learned he was only borrowing power from a man who had been watching the truth longer than any of us. 6 months earlier, I had been a forensic consultant hired to review distressed logistics assets moving through East Asia, the West Coast, and the Seoul Harbor network. Kang Holdings crossed my desk because the company looked powerful from the outside, but the numbers told a different story. Debt hidden inside debt. Shell companies holding up shell companies. Ports registered under family names that no longer controlled them. Insurance routes pledged twice. Warehouses financed through silent creditors. On paper, Kang Holdings looked like a dynasty. Underneath, it looked like a mansion built on glass. At the bottom of that glass was one name: Voss Meridian Group. I told my supervisor I had a conflict of interest the moment I realized Kang Holdings belonged to Ryu's family. I was engaged to him. I loved him. I would not touch a file that could affect the man I planned to marry. They reassigned the report. I thought that was integrity. Elliot Voss thought it was evidence. That was why, 4 months later, he requested me for another consultation. When I first met him in his office above the harbour, I did not know he had already read every line of my work. I did not know he knew about Ryu. I did not know he had watched Kang Holdings from the shadows for 6 years, waiting for the family to either correct itself or expose itself. He was younger than I expected. Mid-30s. Controlled. Precise. The kind of man who made silence feel like a locked door. "You withdrew from the Kang file," he said. I had to. Most people say that after they have already used the information. I'm not most people. No, he said, studying me. That is becoming clear. At the time, I thought he was only evaluating my professional ethics. I did not know he was also evaluating the family I was about to marry into. I did not know Iris Vance was one of his embedded compliance monitors. And I absolutely did not know she had stopped monitoring the Kang family and started trying to become part of it. I found that out the morning after the wedding. Priya sat on the hotel bed beside me while my mother paced near the window, ready to fly to Seoul and personally drag every Kang family member through shame with her bare voice. My phone had hundreds of messages. Guests apologizing. Guests asking if I was okay. Guests pretending they had not enjoyed watching me break. One message came from Elliot. "Miss Calloway, I saw what happened after I arrived. There is more you need to know. If you are willing, meet me at 10 a.m. Voss." I met him in a private dining room above the hotel restaurant. Not a cafe this time. Not casual. There were guards at the door and a laptop already open on the table. Elliot stood when I entered. His eyes went briefly to the faint mark on my cheek, then away, like he had seen enough and did not want to make me feel watched. "Iris Vance works for me," he said. No greeting, no warm-up, just the truth. I sat down slowly. What? She was placed inside Kang Holdings 18 months ago to monitor financial leakage, council payments, and unauthorized side agreements. She had access to systems connected to my entities. "She was your spy. She was my compliance officer," he said, "until she became Ryu's mistress and forgot who she actually worked for." I laughed once. It had no humor in it, so the woman he chose over me was never even his? Elliot's face did not soften, but his voice did. She wanted to be. That hurt more than I expected. Not because I cared about Iris. Because Ryu had destroyed me publicly for a woman who had not even been honest with him. Elliot turned the laptop toward me. On the screen were access logs, timestamps, document versions, printer IDs, account trails. The forged statements had not appeared from nowhere. They had been built. At 2:14 a.m., Iris accessed an internal account folder. At 2:39 a.m., she exported a dormant shell account. At 2:52 a.m., she inserted my name. At 3:08 a.m., she printed the documents from a private office connected to Madame Choi's legal team. At 7:31 a.m., the papers were delivered to Ryu. At 10:04 a.m., he slapped me at the altar. Everything was there, minute by minute, lie by lie. "Why did you not stop it?" I asked. The question came out colder than I felt. "I tried," Elliot said. 3 days before the wedding, my team flagged unusual document activity. I warned Madame Choi directly that the records were compromised. And she ignored you. She wanted a reason to remove you that made her look righteous instead of prejudiced. There it was, the thing I had known for 3 years but never had permission to say out loud. Madame Choi did not dislike me because I was careless. She disliked me because I was not the woman she would have chosen. I was black, American, independent, too direct, too observant, too hard to fold into the old Korean family hierarchy she protected like a crown. Elliot closed the laptop. "I can clear your name," he said. "That is not enough." His eyes lifted to mine. For the first time since I had walked into that room, I felt something inside me settle. "They humiliated me in daylight," I said. "They will not correct it in whispers." Elliot nodded once. "Then we do it in daylight." That was the moment the revenge became mine. Not because Elliot gave it to me, because he finally offered the one thing Ryu never had. A choice. The first move happened at Kang Tower 3 days later. Not in a courtroom. Not through gossip. In the council chamber. The same chamber Ryu had bragged about for years. Dark wood. Gold crest. Long table. Portraits of Kang men on every wall, all of them looking down like they had built the world with their bare hands instead of borrowed money. Ryu was already there when I entered. So was Madame Choi. So was Iris. That surprised me. She stood behind Ryu's chair in a cream suit, no red dress this time, no smile. Without the performance, she looked smaller. Ryu rose when he saw me. "You should not be here." I kept walking. Behind me came Elliot Voss, 3 attorneys, 2 forensic auditors, and enough security to make every Kang guard suddenly remember how to stand still. Madame Choi's lips tightened. "This meeting is for family and council only." Elliot placed a document on the table. "Then it is fortunate I control the voting rights attached to 61% of the debt instruments that define council authority." Ryu looked at his mother. Again, that look. The look of a son realizing his mother had hidden the size of the cage. I sat across from him. Not beside Elliot. Across from Ryu. I wanted him to see my face when the truth arrived. The lead auditor connected a laptop to the chamber screen. The first image appeared. The forged bank statement. Then my real signature. Then the forged one. Then Iris's access logs. Then the printer metadata. Then the account trail. No shouting. No crying. Just evidence. Clean. Cold. Unforgiving, the auditor said. "There is no financial basis for the accusation made against Miss Calloway at the wedding ceremony. The documents used to accuse her were altered, printed, and circulated through internal access connected to Miss Iris Vance." Everyone looked at Iris. Ryu did not move. "Iris," he said quietly. She closed her eyes. That was the confession before the words came. I panicked, she whispered. "You were going to marry her." Ryu took one step back. "You told me she stole from us. I thought if you believed she betrayed you, you would choose me." The room went silent. Then Elliot spoke. "Congratulations, Mr. Kang. You chose a woman who forged documents over the woman who found the weakness in your empire and protected you from it." Ryu looked at me then. Really looked. Not at the dress. Not at the accusation. Not at the woman he thought he could discard. At me. "Nia," he said. I shook my head once. "No, you do not get to use my name like an apology." Madame Choi slammed her palm lightly against the table. "This is enough. Iris acted alone. The family will handle her." "No," Elliot said. "The family is done handling things privately." He opened another folder. "Kang Holdings is hereby placed under direct operational control of Voss Meridian Group. Ryu Sun-jae is suspended from all executive authority pending board review. Madame Choi Yon-hee is removed from financial oversight. All council voting privileges connected to Kang-controlled entities are frozen until audit completion." Ryu's face emptied. "You cannot remove me from my own company." Elliot looked at the portraits on the wall, then back at him. "That is the second time you have called something yours that does not belong to you." One of the council elders stood. Then another. Then another. Not for Ryu. For Elliot. And then, slowly, the oldest elder turned toward me. He bowed. Not deeply, but enough. Enough for Ryu to see it. Enough for Madame Choi to understand what had shifted. The men who had watched me, humiliated at the altar, now lowered their heads because the woman they dismissed had become the witness their empire could not survive without. If you felt that power shift, comment The Kuncel followed, sure. Because that is the moment the room stopped seeing Nia as the abandoned bride. Ryu followed me into the hallway after the meeting. For the first time since I had known him, he looked less like a Mafia heir and more like a man locked outside his own house. "Nia, wait." I stopped. Not because he deserved it, but because I wanted to hear what kind of apology came from a man after power left his hands. I did not know, he said. No, I answered. You did not check. His mouth opened, then closed. Iris had proof. I had 3 years. That landed. I saw it. You had 3 years of my loyalty, I said. 3 years of me sitting through your mother's insults. 3 years of me watching women like Iris get warmth from you while I got tests. 3 years of me helping you prepare for meetings you were too proud to admit you did not understand. He swallowed. I was angry. You were eager. His eyes flashed. That old pride tried to return. Do not make me the only villain here. I stepped closer. Not enough to threaten. Enough to make him stop hiding inside volume. You made yourself the villain when you chose an accusation that let you slap me in front of a live stream instead of asking me one question in private. The hallway security cameras watched us. So did 2 council assistants. So did Elliot from the chamber doorway, silent, letting me finish my own fight. Ryu lowered his voice. I can fix it. No, you can confess. You can apologize. You can live with it. But you cannot fix the woman you broke into becoming someone you no longer have access to. Then I walked away. That night, Ryu issued a statement. Not because he wanted to. Because Elliot's lawyers made sure the choice was statement or lawsuit. It was short, formal, carefully worded. It admitted the documents used against me were false. It admitted I had no involvement in financial misconduct. It called the wedding incident a deeply regrettable misunderstanding. I read that line twice. Then I laughed. A misunderstanding. As if his hand had misunderstood my face. As if his mouth had misunderstood the microphone. As if 300 guests had misunderstood the way he threw papers at my feet. I called Elliot. Release the full audit summary. He paused. That will destroy what is left of his public reputation. Good, I said. He tried to destroy mine with a lie. He can survive the truth. The full audit summary went public the next morning. Business channels picked it up first. Then gossip blogs. Then reaction channels. Then every person who had watched the live stream and called me a gold digger had to decide whether they were brave enough to admit they had been wrong. The headline changed. Humiliated bride, cleared as Kang Holdings, fraud scandal expands. Then another. Voss Meridian takes control of Kang Holdings after forged wedding accusation. Then the one Priya sent me with 15 laughing emojis. Mafia heir loses empire after publicly accusing wrong woman. I stared at that headline for a long time. Not because I needed the internet to love me, because I needed the record to stop lying. 2 weeks later, Iris asked to meet. I almost said no. Then I remembered that healing does not require forgiveness, but truth sometimes requires looking the liar in the face. She met me at a quiet restaurant near the river. No red dress, no confidence, no performance. I'm leaving Seoul, she said. I didn't ask. I know. Her hands twisted around her napkin. I just wanted to say it to you directly. I'm sorry. I watched her carefully. Are you sorry because you hurt me, or because you lost? Her eyes filled. She did not answer fast enough, so I stood. Nia, she said. I looked down at her. You wanted my life because you thought being chosen by Ryu would make you powerful. But the saddest part is, Iris, you won him. You got exactly what you betrayed me for, and it still made you lose. Her face broke. I felt nothing. Not satisfaction. Not pity. Just distance. That was how I knew I was getting free. The real final blow did not happen in court. It happened at Kang Tower during the emergency shareholder and council assembly. Elliot did not tell me what he planned until the car was already pulling into the underground entrance. I want you present, he said. For what? For the vote. I do not hold a seat. You hold the original forensic report that proves the debt chain. You hold the evidence that triggered the governance clause. And after today, if you accept, you will hold something else. I looked at him. He handed me a sealed envelope. Inside was an appointment letter. Nia Calloway, Acting Director of Strategic Compliance, Kang Holdings Transition Board. I stared at it. This is not charity, Elliot said before I could speak. Do not insult either of us by pretending it is. You know this company's structure better than half the men who have been pretending to run it. For a second, the old wound tried to speak. The voice that said people only gave me things because they wanted something. The voice that sounded too much like Ryu's mother. Then I remembered the woman at the altar picking papers off the floor. I remembered the council bowing. I remembered every report I wrote that no one thought mattered. I signed the appointment letter in the back of Elliot's car. My signature looked nothing like the forgery. That made me smile. Inside the assembly room, Ryu stood near the far wall, no longer at the head table. His black suit was perfect. His face was not. Madame Choi sat rigid near the council elders, stripped of her old command but still trying to wear dignity like armor. Elliot took the center seat. I took the seat to his right. The room noticed. Ryu noticed most of all. The vote lasted 9 minutes. 9 minutes to remove Ryu permanently from executive authority. 9 minutes to confirm Vos Meridian's operational control. 9 minutes to appoint me to the transition board. 9 minutes to bury a dynasty's favorite lie. When the final vote passed, Elliot looked across the table at Ryu. Mr. Kang, your access credentials have been revised. Your new role is advisory. You will report to the transition board. Ryu's eyes moved to me. You expect me to report to her? I answered before Elliot could. No, Sun-jae. I expect you to report to the truth. I just happened to be the one sitting in front of it. One of the younger council members covered his mouth. Another looked away. Madame Choi closed her eyes. And Ryu, the Korean Mafia prince who once told a cathedral to escort me out, stood in the room his family built and realized he needed permission to enter offices I could now unlock. That was the revenge. Not screaming. Not begging. Not chasing his mistress into shame. The revenge was access. Mine restored. His removed. After the vote, Elliot walked me to the elevator. Neither of us spoke until the doors closed. Then he said, "Are you all right?" I leaned back against the mirrored wall and exhaled. I thought watching him lose everything would feel louder. And? It feels clean. Elliot nodded. Clean is better than loud. That was the kind of thing he said. Quiet. Precise. A little strange. And somehow exactly what I needed. Months passed. Kang Holdings changed faster than anyone expected. The old guards were removed from finance. The council lost private control over operational routes. Every department that had survived on fear had to learn paperwork. Every man who used to speak over women suddenly discovered that compliance had a black woman's name on it. Mine. Ryu remained in the building, but not in power. I saw him sometimes from across glass hallways. He looked thinner, quieter, still proud, but no longer protected by ignorance. Once, he waited near my office after a board review. "I've read your report," he said. "Which one?" "The transition plan. That is your job now." He winced. I did not soften it. "You were always this good?" he asked. "No," I said. "I was always this visible. You were just looking at Iris." He had no answer. That was becoming his new talent. Elliot never rushed me. That was important. He did not turn my pain into a proposal. He did not confuse protection with possession. He did not say, "I saved you," because he understood I was not saved by him. I was backed by evidence, truth, and the part of myself Ryu had mistaken for weakness. Elliot simply kept showing up. When my mother had minor surgery, he cancelled a board call and sat in the waiting room with coffee neither of us drank. When gossip channels claimed I had planned the takeover from the beginning, he asked if I wanted a statement released and accepted it when I said no. When I worked late, he did not tell me to rest like a command. He sent dinner and a note that said, "Eat before the numbers start looking personal." I kept the note. I did not tell him. Not at first. One evening, almost 6 months after the wedding that wasn't, I found him standing alone in the observation deck above the harbour. The city lights reflected in the glass around him. "Did you know?" I asked. He turned. "Know what? That you cared about me before the wedding?" He was quiet for a long moment. Yes. The answer was so direct it almost hurt. "Then why didn't you say anything?" "You were engaged," he said. "And I am many things, Nia, but I am not a man who mistakes access for permission." I looked away first, because honesty can be harder to stand in than lies when you are not used to it. "I was humiliated in front of everyone," I said. "Sometimes I still feel like they are watching." "They are," he said. I looked back at him. He stepped closer, but stopped before the space became too small. "Let them watch you rise too." That was the first time I let myself want a future that did not begin with proving Ryu wrong. 11 months after Ryu slapped me at the altar, I stood in another wedding dress. Not in a cathedral full of strangers, not under a live stream, not beneath Madame Choi's judgment. This wedding had 40 guests. My mother, Priya, a few people who loved me before the scandal and still loved me after the headlines changed. No microphone waited to turn my private life into public entertainment. No mistress stood in red. No forged papers lay at my feet. Elliot stood at the altar in a dark suit, looking at me like I was not something he had won. Not something he owned, not an asset, not a headline. A woman. A whole woman. A woman who had walked through humiliation and come out carrying her own name. Before the vows, he leaned close and said, quietly, "I know what the last altar took from you. I wanted this one to give something back." I almost cried then. Not because I was weak. Because peace can be heavier than pain when you have carried pain longer. We married without spectacle. That same morning, Kang Holdings issued a routine internal notice confirming Ryu Sun-jae's advisory contract had been renewed under transition board supervision. Priya read it on her phone and whispered, "Girl, your ex is reporting to your wedding gift." I almost laughed during the vows. Almost. Ryu did not come. Madame Choi sent nothing. Iris was somewhere in Singapore, rebuilding a smaller life with a name that now carried consequences. And me? I became Mrs. Voss because I chose to, not because I needed rescue, not because revenge required romance, not because the billionaire CEO owned the empire Ryu thought was his. I chose Elliot because he never needed a lie to choose me. Years later, people still ask me whether I forgave Ryu. They ask it carefully, like forgiveness is the final scene. Every woman owes the man who broke her. Here is the truth. I do not wake up angry anymore. I do not replay the slap every morning. I do not need to hear him beg. I do not need Madame Choi to suffer. I do not even need Iris to understand the size of what she stole. But forgiveness? I stopped treating that word like a gift I owed other people for surviving them. What Ryu did at that altar was not a misunderstanding. It was a choice. A public choice. A cruel choice. A choice made easier by every person in that room who watched and waited to see whether I would collapse. I did not collapse. That is my ending. Not his apology. Not his regret. Not even Elliot's love. Mine. I still have the forged bank statements. They sit in a drawer in my office at Kang Tower, inside a black folder labeled Original Evidence. Sometimes, when a young woman on my team doubts herself because some powerful man has spoken over her in a meeting, I think about showing her those papers. I never do. Instead, I tell her what I wish someone had told me sooner. Never argue with people committed to misunderstanding you. Build the kind of truth they cannot walk around. That is what I did. Ryu built his identity on an empire he did not own. I built mine on work nobody noticed until the day everyone needed it. He chose a mistress with a lie in her hand. I chose myself with evidence in mine. He raised his hand at the altar. I raised the truth in the boardroom. And when I walked out of his wedding, I thought I was leaving with nothing but a bruised cheek and my name dragged through shame. I did not know the council would follow. I did not know his empire would fall into the hands of the man waiting at the back of the church. I did not know I would one day walk down another aisle without fear. I only knew one thing. When a man humiliates you in front of the world, do not waste your life trying to convince him you were worthy. Stand still. Let the cameras roll. Let the lies speak first. Then bring receipts. Because sometimes the woman they throw away is not the woman who loses everything. Sometimes she is the woman holding the only signature that can bring the whole empire to its knees. And mine was real.